You might remember a few weeks ago we were joined on the programme by the team behind the Pensions Matter campaign, or even Pension Matters. What's the right way, Claire?
It's Pension Matters.
There we go. Well, the main aim of this is to get people to think about making some provision for their retirement. Now, whether that's years in the future or maybe just around the corner. And the reality is that these days it's not possible to just rely on state support in older age. And so Pensions Matters is about working out what you want to do when you leave work and how much money you're going to need to pay for that. And next month there is a free information event. This is for people of all ages who feel unsure about pensions or want to know more about retirement planning. And that's happening on Thursday, June the 14th. We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But first of all, let's meet our guests. Claire Whitelegg, who is the investment team person at the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority. What's your official title?
I'm the senior manager on the supervision division with a particular interest in investment services and asset management.
Okay, that's why I didn't get that right.
Yeah.
Sharon Sutton is president of the Personal Finance Society. Sharon, lovely to have you with us this afternoon.
Thanks very much.
And Oriana Hills is from the pensions team at the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority. Okay, so Claire, just remind us why we are talking about pensions so much at the moment.
Okay, well, this has been one of my personal, almost a crusade, which it sounds a bit naff, I know, but it feels like that at the moment. But from our point of view, my team looks after consumer matters relating to investments. And one of the things we've been very conscious about is the need for people to save for their retirement. But also, we've seen a bit of a mismatch in people's expectations for what the state pension will provide to them, what their pension will actually amount to. And I suppose I'm reaching an age which I'm not going to disclose, but it's quite a big birthday this year. And that's made me think about my future as well. And so one of the things that we wanted to do, and we're working with the Personal Finance Society, also with the OFT and with government on this one, is just to get people thinking and talking about it, because it's a bit trite to say, but if you start early, it doesn't cost as much proportionally because you've got all that amount of time for your money to build up. The state pension isn't as much. If the state pension is going to give you less money than you currently earn, and you're going to be at home for more of the time and have more free time, I suppose the question is, what are you going to do with your time? The state pension is a safety net to really catch people and make sure they don't fall into poverty. But at the same time, the state pension doesn't replace your income. And so what we want people to do is think about it, have mature conversations. It's about getting older, but it does happen to everybody. Have a think about, I suppose, also the fact that people are living longer than they used to do. And that's expensive. So the pension that might have been designed to last for 20 years might be lasting for 40 years. I think it's one of the stats, which is an interesting one, is that 27% of women are expected to live until they're 100. So if you want your pension to last for your retirement, then you need to think about how you're going to plan it and how you're going to put that together. But it shouldn't be too daunting. It's like small changes and looking at it. And I think Ori is also going to be talking today about some particular statistics that are relevant to women in particular, because the situation for women generally on pensions and savings isn't quite as rosy as it is for men, and there are reasons for that, but Ari can talk about that one.
That's interesting, because I saw something in the news about the fact that women retiring in 2018 will have average expected retirement incomes £4,900 lower than men, as that gender pay gap remains a major issue. Now, this is in the UK. Oriana, what sort of statistics have you found with regard to women and pensions?
Well, again, these are UK statistics, so we have to be mindful of that when we review them from an Isle of Man perspective, because there are differences between the jurisdictions. At the end of the day, women tend to work less over a lifetime than men. I think some of the things I've found recently, some of the reports have stated, so for example, Royal London in their report from 2015 stated that more women than men expect to work part-time to supplement their retirement income. So that's 60% of women and 50% of men. Whereas I think, even 20 years ago, people were expecting, the state pension to provide much more than that. A lot of women are running up against the what is called the motherhood penalty, and interestingly, it actually only applies to women who have had children between the ages of 24 and 35. So women who begin reaching retirement age after that, they're when they hit their 40s, they actually have, I think, on average 12% less pay than men do, and the gap just keeps widening and widening. Interestingly, women who have children after the age of 35 don't suffer the motherhood penalty because they're more ensconced in work.
Oh, someone needed to tell me that earlier.
Yes. So, but yes, there's an awful lot of work that's going into it. The Chartered Insurance Institute, the CII, sister organization to the PFS, has recently done this report on risk exposure and resilience to risk in Britain today, women's risks in life. That was actually 2016, but still very relevant today, and obviously factors in matters such as the changes to state pension, the changes to retirement age, etc. Locally, obviously, we've got changes on the horizon, but that's coming from a different department, obviously, yes.
I want to come back to that notion of sort of the moving goalposts with regard to retirement age in just a moment. But first of all, Sharon, as the Personal Finance Society is organising this seminar, which is happening on June the 14th, I just wonder what you're hoping people are going to get out of that. What's the main aim of that?
I think it's more about educating people to give them more control of their financial future. And, you look at every single generation that there is. Each generation has its own challenges. The older generation who are at or in retirement already, they are going to live for a very, very long time. And I think when the state pension age, for example, was first thought of, you weren't expected to last very long because work was, generally speaking, manual in nature. And as time has gone on, it's become less so. And of course, medical advances, all the rest of it. It means that you now have to fund for 30 to 40 years in retirement, and that's quite an issue. So what we're hoping to get out of that is to widen knowledge on the subject of pension, what's available, what you can do about it, depending on what age that you're at, and where to seek help and advice, really.
Let's go back to that notion of the moving goalposts, because Sarah, it was an interesting point that you raised actually before we came on the show when we were talking about what was coming up during today's programme, and you said at first you were expected to retire at 60, but now it's 68. How have you managed that change?
Well, it's I should explain that I'm self-employed, so I put a small amount away in a pension, as much as I could afford, because obviously I needed to know when I was in my 20s what I was going to need to live on when I became 60. So I worked it out that I'd probably manage on a certain amount of money, and I could just about afford to put another certain amount of money away, and the old age pension would be a safety net to make up the shortfall. Now I'm told that the old age pension for me won't be paid until I'm 68. So I will still have my small self-employment pension, but that won't be enough for me to retire at 60. I will have to work longer. Now, I don't mind because I enjoy my job, but what annoys me is the fact that I have no time machine, and they just change the goalposts. So for people who aren't fortunate, who perhaps don't like their job, perhaps aren't in very good health, they don't get the option of working longer, or at least if they do, it's a much more of a strain for them than it is for me. I'm also married, and my husband has a pension, so it's sort of two of us paying into the same pot, whereas I have single friends who are either have never married or are widows, and they haven't got the option of relying on somebody else. So it's not so much that I think it's unfair that women shouldn't work the same amount of time as men. I just think it's very unfair that they suddenly changed the goalpost.
So what do we say in this situation? Because this is something we anticipate quite often can happen again.
Yeah, and I think there is. I mean, obviously, there's been quite a trend in that direction. It's difficult to say. I don't know, Sharon, if it's better for you to answer than me on this one. My perspective would be try and plan and then have some contingency in there, because the one thing that will change is the goal. And that's the problem. So I suppose, Sarah, probably wouldn't have changed your saving pattern, but it's changed how and when you're able to actually make an avail of that. So I suppose people have to be flexible. I think there's no magic money tree. I think that's the one that they always say, and it's true. It's very true. But if you don't do anything about it, you will be in a worse position than if you've done something. And I think that's a message that I'd like to get across, and the importance of empowering people, giving them the knowledge so that they know what they can do about something, because it is a complex area. We always say get financial advice, and that's not because there are licence holders. Certainly, if I'm doing pension planning or anything, I wouldn't do it myself, and I'm a so-called expert because I work in the industry and I'm qualified in the industry, but I wouldn't do it myself. but I do know how complex it is. So I think getting that advice is important. What do you think, Sharon?
Well, obviously I'd agree, but the point is, I suppose, if you've got something complicated, analogize it to your water mains burst at your house. What are you going to do? You're going to try and fix it yourself, or you're going to get a plumber in. It's the same with financial planning. You can choose to do it yourself. You can choose to go online. You can choose, and trust me, it's really easy to go online and invest directly. You can do that. It's so easy, and it's so cheap. But if you don't want the consumer protection that goes with that, crack on. The advantages of being regulated, it costs a lot. It costs firms a lot of money to be regulated, to get the education and exams to pass all the qualifications you need to be able to become regulated and to be insured. And the regulator's there to make sure that if anything does go wrong, that you have some protection, you have some fallback there. And you're dealing with people who you can go and complain against and actually have some redress of balance, whereas you get scammed, you go direct online, you don't get the consumer protection. It's poorer outcomes for consumers that way.
And I think I'd also add, and I'm probably going to go against what I've just said, I may consider going online and doing things with a small pot of money, but if it was my financial future, not sort of a windfall or a small amount of money, then I'd want it properly looked at, because I'm looking at a long-term goal. I'm not looking at, let's put this somewhere and then we'll go on a nice holiday. I can probably manage the nice holiday myself, well, apart from the money, but I can certainly not manage to plan my financial future properly.
Okay, we've had a text which actually echoes really what you've said there about needing to start planning at as early an age as possible. And Oriana, I'll come to you in just a moment. This person says, for anyone who's coming up for retirement over the next 20 years, the goalposts have moved a lot. Pensions are so confusing and complex. Pension education needs to start with 16-year-olds, university students, so future generations are well informed about what life could be like if they don't plan and government doesn't have another generation coming up through the ranks with high expectations and reliance on the government for their retirement needs. And that's something you talk about, Oriana, taking personal responsibility and starting as early as you can.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually have to agree with the suggestion that education starts early. I would actually argue that it would start even before the age of 16. I mean, obviously, I'm not from the Isle of Man, but that was an area that was lacking in my education as well originally. We did wind up doing that sort of thing in high school, but it was really only a nod. And I have a 5-year-old who's in reception. I've just been sent the information about the PSHE program. I mean, that's all about bodies, how you change, everything. Well, if they're going to talk about from start to finish, why not talk about old age? Why not talk about it in that perspective? And then you actually get them thinking about it. Well, I suppose you try to get a 5-year-old boy to think about something like that, but at least the language is there and it's made the connection in their brain normal for later. Absolutely.
Had another text from Susie who says, yes, pensions matter, but most people are earning less than the last generation and surviving on insecure employment. The use of 0-hour and fixed-term contracts as well as high rents have put people in a position of just surviving. Saving has become impossible. So a lot of people in the Isle of Man in that position and really don't feel that they've got any spare cash to put aside. What do they do?
Well, a lot of it does come down to starting with yourself. And life is hard and you have to make choices. So it's a case of prioritising what you absolutely need. Figure out what you want your future to look like. You sit down, you go through a budget and you prioritise things. If there's nothing left, something needs to change, and it's like there's 3 certainties in life, aren't there? There's death, taxes, and change, and you can't do anything about them really. It's but you have to. You can plan yourself with the latter at least.